Thank you for listening to Depictions Media Radio. Welcome back, everybody. In this next show, we're going to have Geeta Sehti back with us from Living Well with Geeta, and we're going to talk about stress. She's going to explain to us what stress is and what is stress? Why do we even have it, and how good nutrition it can actually help us deal with stress and how that all works. How nutrition helps us deal with toxic environments, how good nutrition helps us deal with a lot of the emotional things that go along with it, because stress depletes nutrients from our body, and we need to have that good nutrition to put all those things back into our body so that we can continue to live healthy lives, and how that nutrition is also going to help see us through whatever it is that is stressing us. So why don't we bring Geeta onto the show and let's talk about stress. So welcome back again, Geeta. It's always fun to have you.
Thank you, Michael. It's always a pleasure to be on your podcast. Looking forward to our conversation today.
So, what is stress?
It's become such a common word which gets thrown around everywhere. But if we go back eons, let's say to the ancient man, and stress is something which our body was geared, it has adapted. And in nature and in general, it is basically a natural biological reaction to any danger or a situation or a challenge for the body. So our body has adapted, and it creates a certain kind of biological reactions which happen within. Certain chemicals which go up, and certain hormones are produced, certain neurotransmitters are produced. So in literal terms, that is what stress is as a physiological impact.
So is it stress actually in that sense connected to fear? Because we don't even have real fear anymore. Fear is perception now, and back in the cave days, as having the tiger sitting out in front of your doorstep. There's that's real fear. Is oh, I can't go that way because he's gonna eat me.
Yeah, you're so right. It is actually, stress is anything which is considered dangerous. It is related to the feeling of being in a mood of danger, in you're scared that you can be harmed. It's about self-preservation, why the body does what it does. But it's completely changed in terms of how we live today. And so stress, as we know in modern times, in the way we live, is completely different from what stress used to be maybe 50 years, 100 years ago. Mm-hmm. And with the tiger sitting, and we as cavemen trying to protect ourselves from the tiger, and what we are trying to protect ourselves in the state of fear that we live in today is very, very different.
Yeah, I always joke around about the tiger being outside the cave door, but I think you probably have a good point coming until we got into the industrial age, and started urban building and things like that. There really, it hasn't been up to the point of urban building. We had real animals that could attack us and things like that. But going into urban development, we've been able to manage the larger animals and everything to keep them away from our civilization, shall we say, right?
Yeah, that is true. And that is why I feel, and I say that stress as we knew, as human beings have evolved from ancient times to today, from cavemen to where we are with urbanization and everything. So, we literally talk about stress being a response from the body, which is out of a way to protect itself. And it's not just tiger, it could be any stressful situation. In modern times, we can talk about, okay, you're crossing the road and suddenly there is a high speed car coming at you. And that's also a natural response of the body that you will do for self-preservation, for protection. You will run. And that's a stress response. You're in a state of stress where you want to protect yourself from being hit by that car. So your body will respond in a certain way. You will suddenly get more energy. Your blood pressure will go up. Your heart rate will go up. The heart will pump more blood to the brain. Your senses will go up. And we call it the sympathetic response of the body. And so it's not just related to the tiger, it's related to any kind of a threat which can harm you. So that's an inbuilt response in the body that we have to protect, to preserve.
So that's a whole system that you just described.
Yeah.
A string of chain reactions. That's a whole system you just described there that we have to protect ourselves.
Exactly. And it stems from, we have an autonomic nervous system. When I say an autonomic nervous system, what I'm trying to say is these are reactions which are not something which you do, which you respond to. They happen automatically. They're controlled by the brain, by our brain centers. And so our autonomic nervous system has two kind of responses: a fight or flight response, which is basically when you're perceiving some kind of threat, and it's also called the sympathetic response. And the opposite of that is a parasympathetic response, when you're very relaxed and you're in a very restful and happy state, and you're not perceiving any danger or any stress around you. So the body functions between these two states. And the issue that we are having today, why people are talking so much about stress nowadays, is that the way our modern living has become, our need for, our greed, in fact, for having so much, and the life being so fast and having not enough time to do everything, and the stresses of finances and living in a modern day world, is that we are constantly living in that state of stress. Either we are stuck in traffic, or we are trying to get somewhere, or we are trying to finish something and we don't have enough time for that, or we are trying to run from one point to another point to pick up our children, or we are financially not making enough and are concerned about paying the bills, or the groceries are going up, or the inflation. All that is stress, because it impacts how are we going to be able to survive and function in the long run.
Right. No, because it affects our emotional or mental and everything, right?
Yes, and that's where the difference has come in when we describe stress today as compared to what it used to be earlier, is because there is an emotional, when we say in modern times, what would you call stress? I mean, before we've described it as a way to preserve itself, the body's reaction to preserve itself. And what we are talking about today in stress in modern terms, or what we are also calling chronic stress, is it's a feeling when you feel, and it is felt physically, emotionally, and mentally, when the life's demands exceed your ability to meet those demands. That's how we define stress in modern times, that you're just not being able to cope. And yeah.
Okay, so we got our brain. It's not able to cope with say the pile of bills that's sitting on top of the mailbox, and hey, I'm just not getting enough paycheck to cover these bills, or whatever it is, or somebody, maybe there's an illness or something like that, and you're trying to figure out how you're going to like pay for all this. And I don't mean to just keep talking about money, but there's other things that is like, oh, the boss is going to be upset with me if I don't get to work on time, or like you and I were business owners. It's like, okay, traffic isn't moving because of construction, and I got to get to that meeting, and it's like, and all of a sudden our heart rate starts to go up. We feel a constriction in our chest and our breathing and all that kind of stuff. So that's real stress symptoms, right?
Exactly. See, what's interesting to know is, in spite of the fact that we have evolved um, towards a modern urban culture and life and environment around us, the way the body responds and the way the body wants to preserve itself and protect itself in any with any kind of an assault, any kind of a stress mechanism which is impacting it, the response of the body is the same. So whether you're perceiving something to be stressful or whether there is an actual danger, the body responds exactly the same way. It does not differentiate between that. And as a result of which, if you have a stack of bills piling up, or if you're stressed about being stuck in traffic and not being able to reach an important business meeting on time, the body is going to create the same responses. It is going to increase your heart rate. It is going to increase your blood pressure. You may not feel it at that point of time. You may just feel a little bit of palpitation, but there's certain chemical reactions which are happening in the body. And when it becomes constant, that's when it creates disease, it creates imbalances, because the body is not geared to be in a constant state of stress.
Right, right. So that could lead to some of the modern diseases that we see. Um, well, of course, you're the expert on nutrition, but there's other factors that lead into, say, the heart disease, the diabetes is, and the mental illnesses that we see, right?
Yes, you're very right. In fact, I would take this moment to, in fact, break it down and just um, explain it to your audience. It's so simple, yet we do not connect it. And we know that stress is one of the biggest reasons for all the modern day illnesses that we have, especially the metabolic disorders and the mental issues that we are experiencing.
Mhm.
When I said, like earlier, when I said that when you're in a response to any danger, whether it's perceived or actual, when you're in that sympathetic response or the fight or flight response, your blood pressure goes up. Think of it, if you are in a constant state of high blood pressure, it creates issues. It damages your arterial walls because your blood pressure should not be high for long durations of time. So it damages your arterial walls, and that is where cholesterol deposits start happening, because that's again a protective mechanism for the body to prevent or repair that damage. And that's how you get blocks, arterial blocks, and leads to cardiovascular conditions. Then I also said your blood sugar goes up. The reason why blood sugar goes up when you're under a stress response is because you may need to run or you may need to fight. And so body needs more energy. And that's the reason your blood sugar has gone up. But you're not supposed to be in that state for a long duration of time. But when you're in a constant state of stress for long durations of time, which we call chronic stress, high blood sugar levels is the sign which leads to insulin resistance and creates diabetes in the long run, or other metabolic disorders, or weight gain, or non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. So that is happening. When you're in a constant state of stress, your body produces adrenaline and cortisol. Adrenaline, again, is supposed to be produced short term, and cortisol is also supposed to be produced short term. Think of it, if it's constantly being produced, cortisol, what it does is it imbalances your circadian rhythm. And cortisol is a marker for inflammation. And the minute inflammation goes up, your immune system shuts down, will not support you. You will tend to fall sick more often. It damages your liver, because all the hormones have to be metabolized by your liver, which means the detox pathways of the body get blocked. And also, the neurotransmitters are constantly being produced because cortisol takes away the resources from a lot of other neurotransmitters in the endocrine system. That means the production of other neurotransmitters or hormones get impacted, which means indirectly it's impacting your mental health. So, at a physiological level, there are so many. We say in one moment of stress, there are more than 2,500 chemical reactions which get impacted. So you can imagine over a long period of time how many imbalances it creates in the body, and that's how disease process starts. I mean, I've just broken it down in the simplest of ways to tell you what goes on how stress can play such a huge role in creating imbalances in the body, which leads to diseases.
Yeah. Wow. That's like, uh, pardon the pun, that's a grocery list of things that happen. uh, I'm poking fun, but this is serious. Um, that it, so how do we reduce some of those stresses so that our body gets out of this state? Because if we look at ancient times, that we were only in that stress situation. One, go back to the tiger sitting outside, or two, because we were trying to we were hunting and trying
Yeah.
to gather food, right? Because that sort of thing, which is basic survival sort of thing, right? And while you're eating and you've gathered the food and you know that you're in a safe spot, all those hormone levels have gone back down again to the happy state. And now you're producing the happy hormones.
Yeah.
Happiness has its own set of hormones, doesn't it?
It does. All the good hormones that we need to give our endorphins levels and keep us motivated and keep us happy and keep us satisfied and with a feeling of love and warmth and welcome are oxytocin and serotonin and dopamine and a lot of other endorphins, which are produced, which create those balances in our brain, which give us that feeling of moving forward and feeling happy and feeling motivated and enjoying life. All those get impacted. There are various other reasons, but stress has a huge role to play in blocking the production of those neurotransmitters and hormones.
Yeah. So how do we? One is like, because you are in general a health expert. You just take the path of great nutrition for us, but how do we start to lower those things so that we start to produce more of those endorphins, those happy hormones, and stop producing the stressful ones?
Yeah. So, Michael, it's not so simple because I'll tell you, though I work with nutrition, and from a functional perspective, nutrition is just one aspect, one pillar of the basic foundational pillars of health. What's interesting is that the body, when it is in a state of stress, when it is in that sympathetic state, which we have described, which it's supposed to be in for a very short duration of time, because once the stress is over, you're supposed to shift into a parasympathetic state. And when we say fight or flight for the sympathetic state, for the parasympathetic state, we call it the rest or digest state. So when you're in the rest or digest state, that is the time when your reproductive system functions and when your body will digest food. So if you're in a stressful state, your digestive system shuts down, you will not make babies and you will not digest food. So I could be giving somebody the best of nutrients, the best of supplements, the best of foods and organic foods and all. The body is not going to absorb those nutrients because your digestive system has shut down. So when somebody is experiencing and is in a very intense state of stress, we do not work through nutrition. You have to come into a parasympathetic state, so that the body's digestive system can start functioning, so that it can get the nutrients which will support the production of neurotransmitters, which will kind of bring that state of calm back. So nutrition is not the strategy we use in those situations. You have to work in building your stress resilience. And I can understand when somebody is so overwhelmed and is in a stressful state that either they have an illness or too much debt or they've lost their job and things like that. It's very difficult to take those steps. But my favorite steps, 2 steps, which I tell my clients are, just don't worry about the logistical aspect of those stress at that point of time, because your brain won't even function for you to think in that direction. where you can start looking and breaking down things at a micro level and see, okay, what can I do about this? Is any help which I can reach out for, and things like that. To even be able for your brain to function, you need to shift into a parasympathetic state, even if it's for short durations of time. And the way to do it is, one, get out in the nature, go walk, because that will, just by walking and connecting to the nature, your body produces endorphins, and that endorphins will slowly allow you to be in a state of parasympathetic response. And the other thing which is instant is deep, slow, heart-centered, heart-focused breath work. So those are my two biggest tools which I work with clients who are under a high state of stress, that just close your eyes, focus on your breath, and just do deep, slow inhaling and exhaling. I can take them to the next level, but that's the beginning stage. Even count 5 breaths, slow breaths, where you're just focused on inhaling and exhaling, and slowly build it up. Once they've formed this practice, they automatically start seeing a switch, because what happens is, in the body, physiologically in the body, the shift between the signals, when I was describing about your heart rate goes up, your blood sugar goes up, all that response is sent from the brain and the gut. There is an exchange of information which happens through the brain and the gut, and through every other organ system in the body, including your heart, your lungs, your thyroid, your kidneys. All that happens through the highway which we call the vagus nerve. It's the longest nerve in the body. And that vagus nerve is the one which switches from the stress state to a rest and digest state, from the sympathetic to the parasympathetic.
Right.
And the way to switch from that state to the other state is through breath work. It's very simple. Within a few minutes of breath work, your vagus nerve can switch from a sympathetic state to a parasympathetic state. So you're basically working on that highway.
Okay, so let me rehash that a little bit. So the vagus nerve, we can call it like the information highway between our gut and our mind, right?
Our brain, yes, that's right.
And we can ease that nerve with breath work or by walking.
Yeah,
but
there are a lot of other ways.
We can't do an example of walking while we're here. Yeah. But we can. Do you have a breath exercise you can share with people?
Yeah, I can very easily. I can tell you a simple breath that we do is called box breathing. Mm-hmm. Where if you want to do it along with me, we can do it.
Yeah, let's do it together.
Let's do it together. I want you to place either one hand or two hands, both your hands on your heart. Right. Not really on the left side, but just in the middle of your chest, above your breastbones, and just close your eyes. And we will take a deep inhale to the count of 4.
Okay.
Inhale. And then after a count of 4, you're going to hold the breath for a count of 4. And then exhale to a count of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then hold to a count of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then again, inhale to a count of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then hold to a count of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then exhale to a count of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then again, hold to a count of 4. And so this is called box breath work, where you're basically inhaling, holding, exhaling, holding. And what I tell them to start doing is just 5 rounds of it. Anytime you're in a very high state of stress, just do this, or start doing it morning, afternoon, and evening. And it allows that little switch to happen, and they can slowly start increasing the number of rounds, cycles that they do of this breath work. I can see you're noticing something, Michael.
Oh, yeah. Well, we had to, I don't go much of any place without my Fitbit, because it tells me things, right? So actually, I did notice that because when we started the conversation, my heart rate was up a little bit because I get excited because to everybody in the audience is like Geeta is one of my best friends. So I get excited when I get to hang out with my best friends. And so my heart rate was up. But when we did that breath thing, my heart almost went down below 70 beats per minute because it was starting to relax everything back to a resting state.
So you can imagine, and this was just a short duration that we did only 2 rounds, not even complete 2 rounds. So you can see if you do it with focus, if you're really focused on your like observing your inhales and exhales, that can really help. Even 5 breaths can switch right away and help you from getting into that parasympathetic state. And slowly, we have a term which we use, heart rate variability, which also in the long term allows you to stay in parasympathetic state over a longer duration of time. That's how we say it builds your resiliency towards stress. There are certain watches which, or there is an aura ring, or there are certain tools which kind of help you also monitor your heart rate variability.
Yeah.
But I feel even without gadgets, as you keep doing it, you will start noticing and seeing the experience yourself. For me, I relate it strongly to the gut symptoms, because your body's digestive system, your whole gut starts functioning much better. And there is a very strong link that your microbiome, your colony of bacteria, they start thriving when you shift in a parasympathetic state. And they're a huge missing link towards the process of allowing you to build resiliency from different diseases and all. So there are multiple levels of benefits that you start getting the minute you start staying in longer durations of a parasympathetic state.
Yeah. It seems it's really important for our health to aid in to keep those stress levels not so much down as it is so that they spike and drop off, instead of like being in that stress state for like hours at a time. And so many of us do experience those stress levels for hours at a time instead of minutes at a time, right?
That is so true. In fact, I mean, when I was just explaining to you about the box breath work, now this really helps for people who are in longer durations of time. As you if you make it a habit of your daily life, whether you're in a stressful state or you're not in a stressful state, if you start doing breath work regularly, and that's why in our cultures, like when you look at Chinese cultures, they have Tai Chi, which is again focused on breath so much. We have pranayama and yoga in the Indian culture, which is again focused on making sure that you're breathing, because all this allows certain stimulation of the vagus nerve, and all these activities lead towards building resilience, so that even if you are in a state of stress, if you're exposed to stress, your body's ability to cope with it is much better. You learn to manage under stressful situations. You learn to manage where your body's response towards producing high blood pressure or blood sugar and all is a lot more managed and controlled as compared to if you do not have any resiliency towards managing stress.
Yeah. Oh. We've done in other shows where we talked about like the epigenetics of things, where if we're constantly in that state of stress, that other things start to go wrong. That's where we start to see like how genetics starts to play in long-term and chronic diseases, or acute things that happen also, right?
Yeah, that's right. In fact, I'm glad you brought up the epigenetic aspect, because I was thinking about it, that why do some people, when they are in a chronic state of stress, some people develop arthritis, whereas some people develop cardiovascular conditions. So how does that function? How does that happen? The reason why that happens is that you have genes, like which in your family, or maybe your weakest link, you have the genes for arthritis in your family, or you have the genes for cardiovascular conditions. Now, for so long, we had always emphasized, oh, I have cholesterol issues in the family, and that's why I have cardiovascular conditions. No, that's not true. You may be having the gene, but you have the ability through the environment to make sure those genes remain switched off. But if you have the gene within you and your epigenetics, which is influenced by the stress which you're being exposed to, your weakest link is that gene which is existing in your DNA that is going to get turned on when you're exposed to stress. So it's because of the stress that that gene has got turned on. That means your epigenetics is what has been responsible for your gene, your that switch to get turned on, and you have the ability to turn off that gene. So that's why in today's times we are saying, through a functional lens, we are saying that genes play only a 5% role, and epigenetics technically play the biggest role, which is the influence of your external environment, which can either turn off or turn on the gene.
Yeah. So there's lots of things that we should be looking into to control the effects of our external environment on us, right?
Very much.
Anyway, as always, it's always fun talking to you. I always learn so much from you about what our bodies actually do. It's just amazing things, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's, Michael, I'm glad because we have so many conversations away from podcasts as well. And we talk so much about the different aspects of health and nutrition because that's my passion and how it is linked to where we are today at a macro level in our society and community, and the kind of environment we are being exposed to at multiple levels, with pollution, with toxins, with stress levels, with whatever is going on, that it is an area which cannot be ignored if we want to remain healthy, and especially what are we passing down the generations to our children and grandchildren. I feel there is such a strong need to be aware of what's going on in our environment and how to make sure that you can't prevent it from impacting us, but how to minimize the negative impacts so that we can remain healthy and pass on what we need to pass on to the generations coming up.
Right. Again, we're going to get into the best ways to get a hold of you because, hey, I think that a functional nutritionist is something that we all need to have in our lives.
Yeah, if it was in my hands, I would say this should be education which should be introduced to children at school level, so that, because it's basic foundational information or education which needs to be brought at grassroots level, so that the kids know what they're eating and how it's impacting them and what they're exposing themselves to, and the trauma and the stress and in the environment and the pollution, and where does our food come from. All that is so important, and for them to understand how the body functions.
Well, nutrition is in education that they go in two different paths. All we get in school is the food pyramid thing.
Yeah.
But okay, just add this is like the food pyramid thing was created so the farmers could sell more. Well, I shouldn't say farmers, grocers could sell more food, but we're trying to leave that part of the politics out of this. But what if we were to teach our children more about how our bodies actually work and how the nutrition and the systems all kind of come together,
Yeah, I mean, we are taught in biology. Technically, we all learn, but I don't think we are taught the way the food gets converted and how we are using those nutrients in the practical way. It comes down to the same thing. You ask the kids today, and they'll tell you whatever they're learning in school, they never land up using in their practical life. Never. I mean, it's exactly the same thing. We are not teaching them the real aspect of what kind of foods to eat, what is real nutrients, what is real whole foods. We are not teaching them all that.
Yeah.
So that education needs to shift, to change, if we really want to create awareness around it at the grassroots level.
Yeah, it was something I was taught at home that because I also grew up with an indigenous culture, that I was taught that we were supposed to eat like the bear. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, we can eat the meat, we can eat the fish, but if we watch how the bear does it, he doesn't just eat all one thing, and then he eats whatever is available according to the season. Like the
Mhm.
salmon run at a certain time, and that's when he goes and gets the salmon. Or the berries, they bloom and plump up at a certain time, and that's when he eats the berry. You know.
It is so interesting, Michael, that you brought this up, that the way a bear eats is exactly because the animals very intuitively know how to eat. And it's not that the human beings didn't know how to eat intuitively. We've lost that intuition because of the processing industry. Today, the kids are taught in school eat cereal and milk, and that's healthy, and have a carton of juice, and that's healthy. And they don't even know where milk comes from or where the vegetables grow. And typically, I remember my kids in elementary, and most of the times the kids would not know more than 5 vegetables. And there are that different cultures have so many vegetables, which basically carrots, peas, broccoli, maybe cauliflower, and maybe tomatoes, what goes on their pizza. And
Well,
that's the
but the
vegetables
tomato's
which
a
kids
berry. It's a
know.
fruit.
And exactly, and potatoes because of
Yeah,
French fries and chips. That's all
yeah,
that they
yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Um,
So
yeah,
there's a
it's
big disconnect to what
so
whole foods are.
so if everybody goes to living livingwellwithgeeta.com, right? Or connects with using the same words on Instagram, right? And Geeta has this wonderful Instagram where she actually shares what she's doing in the kitchen, and it's like food is a passion, right?
Yes. Yes, I think the reason why I'm in this line is because it started from my from my love for food, how to use food as medicine from a very young age.
Yeah.
And that's a reason I'm glad that life gave me the opportunity to take this up as a career, as something which I really enjoy doing. And I think I will keep doing it forever because there is so much to learn. Life is so much to teach. So, yeah, you can find me. I have a website under the name Living Well with Geeta, and I have an Instagram and a Facebook handle also under the same name. So, reach out for, I love to have conversations about how to use food as medicine. I'm always ready for that.
Yeah. So, anyway, we've held you long enough. You probably got to get back to helping people learn to deal with stress and to deal with nutrition. And we love having you on the show. And to everybody listening, or hey, maybe you're actually watching this on our Rumble page. Please click on that subscribe button wherever you find it, and get more from Geeta. And Geeta, you're actually gonna have your own show pretty soon, aren't you? Where you'll be sharing some of your webinars and things like that.
That's right. I will be having a podcast under my own name, Living Well with Geeta, where I will be sharing a lot of information about different conditions, especially specialized with gut health and various aspects of health, and talking in detail about ways of how these conditions develop and how we could support and those conditions using using nutrition and lifestyle. So I will be starting up my page and my podcast very soon.
Yeah, cool. All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today, and we will see you next time.
Thank you, Michael.
This show has been produced by Depictions Media. Please contact us at depictions.media for more information.